Welcome. I'm your host, Paula Scatoloni, the founder of Transformative Harmonics, a podcast that offers listeners a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern science. Good morning. Welcome back to Transformative Harmonics. I'm Paula Scatoloni, your host. I'd like to invite you, as always, to take a moment to find your seat if you're not already sitting, and to shift from fifth gear, if you're moving along, into first or second gear, if you can, by just listening to the sound of my voice, starting to notice your surroundings, find the back of the body, and just drop in to the present moment before we begin. This upcoming episode is going to have some intellectual discussion in it, as well as an invitation to feel into how you relate to any of the material we are talking about. So I invite you to slow down and create some space before you take in more. My guest today is Sarah Gillen. She is a LMFT, a trauma and family therapist, a medical intuitive, and a spiritual healer with 45 years of experience. Sarah developed energy dynamics, a synergy of several psychology modalities, including attachment systems work, neuroscience, polyvagal, traditional Chinese medicine, and Tongren distance healing. It also includes numerous energy modalities, breath and embodiment work, herbalism, and shamanic and transformative processes. Sarah's mission has always been to help people, especially the highly sensitive, to free themselves from long-held patterns from this and other lives, so that together they can help transform the energy field of Gaia for all beings and live more peacefully and expansively as part of the web of interdependence. A book that she has published recently about her work is called From Hurt to Joy: How to Transform Self-Defeating Patterns. So I welcome you to take time to listen and allow anything that we talk about that feels resonant to land in your body. And if something does not, you can always put it on a shelf for later and go back to it. Welcome, Sarah. Today, I'm going to invite you, before we start, to really slow down, to take some time, because there is a lot of wonderful information that's going to be coming your way, and opportunities to think outside the box, to think in an integrative way. And I want to prep you for that. So before we begin, I'm going to ask you to just go ahead and find your back body and start to feel where you're in relationship with the chair or the couch or the car seat. And move from fifth gear into first. And this idea that something has your back. And certainly when we know that there's something there to support us, it's like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. And we can start to settle and slow down and find that slowness that allows us to take in and allow the information that's going to be shared today to find its way into a place of meaning, or one of those aha moments maybe that might happen today, or even just sparks more curiosity. So welcome to this episode. It is just a thrill for me to sit with someone who I talk to on a fairly regular basis, I think. And we can just talk for hours and they fly by, and realized, wow, maybe we should do a podcast together and start to create some shared opportunities for sharing this wisdom that you hold. So Sarah is here to do that with us today. And I'd like to start this, as always, with giving the guest opportunity to talk about herself or himself, their path. And for you, Sarah, coming in, you have been doing this since the 1960s. So you've had quite a journey. And so I want to start by first just giving you an opportunity to share your path of how you came to be here in this world today, and sharing your book, and maybe tie that into, you know, what's happening in the world right now. Because you've really watched this evolve from the 1960s to the point. It's like you're able to look at the whole transition of what's happened since then, which is a quite unique perspective, I think.
I'd be happy to, and I'm thrilled to be here. It's so lovely to be able to chat with you anytime, but I'm really looking forward to what you're building now. And so I'm excited to talk about energy and healing and what's happening in the universe. Yeah. So to answer your question, I was in high school and then the beginning of college in the 60s. I went to college in 1969. And that's when I started, since I wasn't at home, able to, I'd been feeling energies always, but it was obstructed by family life. And, I started becoming aware, as a lot of people were. That was when people were going to India and starting to get initiated by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and other yogis. And I think the main points that were important for me, while I was at school, I was organizing alternatives to Western medicine. That was what I called it. With the help of the president of the college, which was great, and looking into things like drum healing and African sound healing and reflexology and herbalism, African herbalism, that was coming up a lot. But I think the events that are the most telling are that I wasn't at college for a year when I was 18, 19, and at that point, I heard very, very clearly over this shoulder that there's going to be a big worldwide cataclysm in about 50 years. And that was 1971. So it was right on track. I didn't know what the form of it was, so I felt it as kind of like this dark cloud hanging over my head my whole life. And what it turned out to be, actually, COVID was the beginning of it. I was feeling other events that were like horrible or horrifying to me. And it was like, that's sort of prep, but we're moving in the right direction. And then COVID was actually, okay, now this is when we're going to start teaching the world that everybody needs to work together and that there is a big change coming. And I was relieved, because in 1971, if there was a cataclysm, what everybody thought was World War III, nuclear war. And so everybody getting sick and going into their houses seemed like a great idea. Quiet down, like spend time with yourself, connect, whatever. I thought it was great. I stayed home and wrote. Actually I had a lot of clients who were really scared. So actually I worked a lot. And then the next big event just happened in 2025, March 21st, which was so what I've been hearing then is I've been getting all of these messages and hearing more, really wanting community and hearing more from other sources that were showing up, that were hearing about galactic energies, who I'd never been able to talk to anybody about that stuff. my experience is that I've been here for 2,000 years. Here I am. I'm a licensed therapist. And when I got licensed, you weren't allowed to talk about any of this stuff. And I'm, psychodynamically trained, object relations. But I have to tell you that the universal energies are going, prepare, and we're here, but you all have to this is what I got out of what they told me when I was 19 is my job was to help people release their trauma, release intergenerational trauma, human collective unconscious trauma, whatever their stuff was, to be able to free themselves so that they could move into being able to receive and work with the energies that were going to be flooding in, because it was going to be a big shift. And then what I found was the big shift happened in March. And that was the end of Kali Yuga. I didn't know that the Yugas could end. And then it ended on a day. It was March 21st. I mean, that was like, okay, I've seen rainstorms like that, where I'm standing there and I'm not wet. And right here, it's like a solid wall of water. It was like that. And it's not instantly everything's wonderful. We still have to do our work, but the energies I'm picking up are like so excited, because I don't think that we're going to be in the Yuga cycle anymore. With the Yuga cycle is you go down into the depths and then you come up into the light, and that's like the Lemurian age, the Atlantean age, like various times, and then it goes down into forgetting everything. But it looks like that's going to be shifting. So that this was an experiment by the universe, and they've decided enough is enough. And so we can get into this later. I'm obviously getting all excited. What I want to talk about is energy, because that's where I live. But my experience is I've been here pretty much 2,000 years to try to help people actually see what's going on. And the problem was the timing was terrible. I mean, I remember 2,000 years ago in China trying to tell the emperor that he was making a huge mistake by not valuing women. That didn't go over very well.
Sure.
I lost my head over that. And I had to relive that one when I was in this life about 22. I don't know why, but and so I've been watching this and fighting it, and then now it's finally opening up. So in terms of like, why now? It's because we're having the opportunity to come out from under a huge constriction experiment, which is not the way energy works. If you constrict energy enough, it becomes physical. And if you keep constricting it, it becomes so dense that there's no way to get actual universal energy to flow through that body. You can do that. People in power at the moment are examples of it.
Yeah. Well, what I'm taking from it is that we are in what you've witnessed is we've been in the middle of a cycle. And if people don't know about the Kali Yuga cycle, maybe we can direct them to a resource for that. But it's an understanding of the fact that civilizations and life itself goes through cycles. Taken from, I'm thinking a particular culture or.
Yeah, that's Hindu.
It's Hindu.
And it's a 12,000 year cycle. And yes, I can give you the name of the book.
So we'll share that with them. There's a lot as well being put through the science and non-duality organization of different movies that are out there right now that explain this as well from an indigenous perspective. So you're explaining that, and that in the process of that, we are opening to a broader perspective of ourselves as humans, and which I talk a lot about in terms of heart opening. But you're going to talk today really about this intersection of, and how do we think about ourselves through the lens of energy, which is what you do in addition to being a therapist, in addition to being an acupuncturist. And it's like how you're very integrative. And so let's talk about what it means to think of ourselves through the lens of energy. And in particular, your book, From Hurt to Joy, emotions, hurt, joy, emotions are energy. So I think there's a lot to say here. And so let's take a step forward with this. First, there is a massive change happening. It's a collective change. It's happening everywhere. How do we parcel that down into something that's really understandable for people? What does it mean to think about ourselves through the lens of energy? And so I'll start there with that question, and then we can move along into some of the, I think, poignant parts of the book that make it very unique and very integrative.
Well, first of all, I'm not a licensed acupuncturist. I went to acupuncture school, but I didn't get licensed. So I just want to clarify that. And the other thing is I've done therapy from the lens of energy all along. With some people, I didn't talk about it. I wasn't doing things to them that they weren't receptive to, but I can't help but see that way. And I think what I have always been trying to do is help people really, really embody themselves. I call it enhoming, like really being able to be in themselves and then become aware of the energy in themselves and in their system, and then how it interacts with energy in general. And I think some of the benefit of this time now is like when theoretical physicists are talking about what I'm talking about and realizing that physics has been kind of a little incorrect about the way energy works. It's helpful to me and to the work we're doing, because one of the major points is that energy isn't static, and it's not, by definition, and it changes all the time. It's malleable unless you constrict it. And what we've done on Earth is constrict it so that we think that everything is the way it looks and that things don't change and that we have to adjust to it. And that, and not recognizing that energy, like that you change your energy if you're afraid. If you constrict like this, it's a natural thing to do, but it's the worst thing to do to protect yourself, because when you constrict energy, the way the amplitude and the frequency and the wavelength actually work is as you pull in like that and make the waves smaller and faster, you're actually going to attract negative energy because it's operating at the same amplitude and frequency.
So fear attracts fear.
Fear attracts fear. Fear attracts, the best way not to be attacked is to be able to be really centered and open, but not unprotected. Like to have the energy, and we can get into that more some other time, because it actually, what it does is it fills up the wave. The amplitude is actually the amount of energy in the wave. And that's the way and so things are much more malleable. It's why much more as we're moving forward in this time period, people are going to find out that they can actually experience miracles and have things change, not like the manifesting that we've been taught for the last 30 years, like how to think that it's already happened, and because that's actually very controlling, but that you live the energy that you're being. If you are afraid, and I've certainly been afraid plenty in my life, then you see things certain ways. And so therapy has always been for me helping people work through the stuff that already happened so that they can be in the present, and see that they're now more able to be in charge of their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that life mirrors, energy mirrors what your energy is.
So it sounds like you were working from a polyvagal perspective before there was polyvagal, and an understanding of the fact that how we operate on the inside influences what we see on the outside.
Yes. Yeah. That part just seemed like coming home.
Yeah. So when polyvagal came out, and if those don't know about polyvagal, we'll put something in the show notes. It, for me, it certainly validates, right, this awareness that most providers have of that your internal structures impact how you operate in the world. And so that the work in the world, some of it's outside work, but a lot of it's inside work, right? Because when we feel safer and we don't have the traumas inside, we think and act differently. Yeah. So you're well ahead of the wave of bringing that information, and we're already working with people energetically, and now the arena in the world is open to hear and receive what you have to say and what you've been doing for a while. The way that you thread things in, I think, is beautiful, coming from the perspective of emotions as energy and working with emotions, and how do we tolerate and develop skills to be with our emotions. And I know you have a lot of framework for that as well. And do you want to share a little bit about that framework?
It's through the way I do it is the way I look at it, since I seem to specialize in people who've been traumatized as children. I see it as working on developing the structure and foundation to be able to tolerate emotions that were intolerable. I mean, the reason why trauma isn't an event. It's not like automatically an accident or a war or whatever. It's how you react to it. And if it overwhelms, the definition is any event that overwhelms your system's ability to process it, in which case it's going to get stored. And then, Bessel van der Kolk did all of the research on the neurological side of it about how it actually gets stored as a trauma memory, which is different from a memory that can process and release itself. So they get stuck. And so he did a really great job of handling that. And I saw it from the need of having to develop the energetic structure to then be able to be with those feelings. The goal is to be able to release any trying to control it, which is where it's like physics and energy comes into it, because control blocks and constricts, period. And so I talk about it. I started talking about grounding back in the 70s, and nobody was talking about that. And now I'm calling it, kind of when I'm working with someone, I call it en-homing, like really actively becoming home in your own energy. And what it's about is teaching people really, really, really how to experience their own energy on the inside. So what it feels, and it starts physically, because physical is part of energy. Everything is. And so moving into grounding and then centering, and those are two different things. So grounding is more like being connected to your surroundings and to the earth, but very, very much inside your own, actively and alively, like awake inside your own self, everywhere, like the back of your neck and your left knee, and that place that you skip over all the time. Those places are important. That's where this stuff is stored. And so, and it literally affects how the neurology, which is energy in your body, like nerves are energy pathways, it affects how those function. I've had clients who come in and they want to talk about something, whatever usual therapeutic issue. And oh, by the way, they fell off a cliff and they can barely move their right leg. This is a specific guy. And I said, well, let me teach you how to, like, first we need to teach you to ground because then we can't handle your divorce until you can be with the feelings. So I teach him to ground, which means he has to become awake and alive in his right leg. And guess what? The nerves start to function again. Or the woman with a broken back. It happens all the time. Because if we're going like this, the energy can't get in there and it can't be malleable and fluid, which is what energy wants to do. So centering is once going through that, centering, the way I do it is, how do you really connect with the still place in an alive way where you meet your own spirit, and spirit with a capital S. They'll kind of want to dance with you. So there's that. And then there's, what all of that needs is awareness. So it's going from people being shut off from themselves to try to protect themselves, and then way too much in their head, which is a sure sign that you're not grounded. And learning the difference between awareness and thinking. And so we practice developing more awareness of their awareness while their thoughts are like, I call it leave the static in the attic. And we go play elsewhere. Like, if you don't like what your mind's doing, leave the static in the attic and go to the kitchen, right?
Love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, we have fun. I can't work without having, I broke rules really early in my life. We have fun. And then having those tools really solidly so that you can handle the storm of whatever was too much to handle as a child. As you then release that, which is obviously the job of therapy in general, but with these skills, then the patterns actually do release.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's energetic about it is you can't try to make anything go away. You have to be with it and honor it. And so I give like energetic tools that are real and solid.
Can you give us one now that you might share with someone?
Well, it's the grounding and the centering, but also, the easy one that I think, it's not easy, but if you're having a panic attack, it's not hard to get out of a panic attack. This is how I learned it. I learned it on the streets of San Francisco when I was having one at the age of 18. If you breathe and you get your diaphragm, now everybody's talking about this. If you got to get your diaphragm moving. Hello, polyvagal. You have to get your diaphragm moving. And I didn't have any other options, and I knew there was nobody coming to my rescue. So I just sent energy down into the earth, and I was active in my legs, could feel it like connecting and tingling through the cement, concrete, whatever. And then breathe. Like, if you come back to what's real, that stuff goes away. The way to stop a panic attack is to ground yourself and get your diaphragm moving by taking deep breaths that expand your rib cage out to the side and have your diaphragm push down on what happens to be your liver. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm. But the energetics of it too, of going into grounding into the earth to bring you into relationship with something.
With something, and it's something that's real. So the other thing is, anytime you're like panicking like that, or you're spinning out about anything, or you're in one of those lovely times when you don't know what you're going to do next, which is an incredibly fertile, creative time, always go back to what's real. And what's real is your connection to the earth and to yourself. And let your head, leave the static in the attic.
Leave the static in the attic. So you're speaking about something I talk about often, which is that we are always in relationship with something. It's whether we pay attention to it. Yeah, well, we disconnect because we don't realize the attachment system doesn't realize that the earth is a relationship, or the space around you is a relationship, or the tree is a relationship. We only see humans, maybe animals, as relationship.
That's really interesting. I mean, it is so obvious, but and the reason why, like from my perspective, is if everything is energy, it's all one. And so the other thing that I work with people on is what all one means, what all that is means. It's not like, oh yes, I like trees. It's like literally the energy is, it's all one. And so yes, why we think we're disconnected, this is the whole constriction into physical that's just incorrect.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's fake. We've been living this and we're all in such pain about it because of all of the lessons to be disconnected and isolated, and that you're not connected to anything. So then you have to be greedy and to try to fill the void of no relation.
Yes.
And because you're disconnecting yourself from the energy that would fill you so richly. You'd feel all the time the way you do if you go outside and it's a beautiful sunny day, and you go, and you really allow yourself to open up.
And this is wisdom or understanding that's embedded in more of an indigenous perspective.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And, one of the worst thing, absolutely the worst thing we ever did was colonize. Because they know. And I think there are ways that the evolution now is bringing more, I don't know, finesse or aspects or something, but they've known all along. And we were disconnecting them from their land, from their families, from
yeah, we could go on and on. So you're talking about the physiological benefit of, and psychological, if we're talking about anxiety.
An example. So we're just talking panic here.
Yeah, we're using panic as an example, a physiological process, a psychological process that has an energetic component. That if you start to think about yourself through the lens of energy and the lens of understanding that you are interconnected to everything, you can tend to something like a panic attack without having to take a medication.
Oh, absolutely.
In that moment.
Yes.
And something that is right there, which is your relationship to the earth or relationship in general. But
more specifically, relationship to yourself.
Relationship to yourself.
Come back. You're lost. Come back.
Come back. Come back inside.
And then, so how to come back is always my first thing.
How to come back. And the therapies and the opportunities that are out there right now, we've had this explosion of the word somatic, which, in you and I both know, for us, it was like, oh, of course you have a body. But a lot of people don't know they have a body.
No,
right?
They don't. Yes.
They don't.
Right.
So this idea of coming back to the body and the body being the place, the container that is going to offer us that ability to tolerate what we're feeling or experiencing inside. And so there's just some fundamental remembering of what it means to be in bodies that are that's happening everywhere, which is so exciting. And then here you come. And it's like, but well, by the way, you're also energetic. And what does that mean?
And also, people don't know they have bodies because, what I find, and I'm sure you do too, and I'm sure your therapy listeners do too, is that people stay away from their bodies. They vilify their body because their body is where they feel pain. And so they're blaming their body when the body is the one that's like the child holding the pain, and people are being mad. And so it is difficult with a lot of people to actually get them to connect with themselves, like to give them the skills, so that they can actually move into home. So they can move home.
So they can return home. Yeah. I know in my own journey, I left the body and was, with the help of society and culture, turned on it. I had an eating disorder for many years. And so that took up all the space in my head, so that there wasn't any time or space or interest in being in the body, because it became, consumed with the outside and what I look like, and if I fit in and belonged based on my looks. And so I think that the way that society is also, whether it's the fast pace of our culture or the messages about that the outside's more important, or the trauma, diversion from feeling emotions. There's so many reasons why it's hard to say, okay, I'm going to develop some practices for being present in the physical form. There's so many things that are there to take us out. Yeah. And so, so I appreciate us breaking it down to something super simple, like feel your diaphragm and connect to the earth. Because that feels like a starting place for people, at least. And then there's this question about centering, because you've got grounding and centering as two separate things.
Right.
Can you talk about centering a little?
Yeah. My definition of centering is it's the place where you feel yourself being. And I have ways of helping them get into an experience of that, even if they've got all this trauma that can be on hold. Because I think you have to learn how to do this before you can actually release trauma, release those feelings. Because of all the reasons you're talking about, all of the pushing away and all of that's actually holding on to it. Like if you push something away, you're holding on to it, right? And so when people can get to this center that I'm talking about, it is the still place that's at the center of everything that people, have been writing about for thousands of years. And it's inside us. And when people can get into that, if they choose, I've had people choose not to, but if they, I'll give an example in a minute, but let me finish this sentence first. When they get into that experience of that being their still place, that they recognize is their core, and not what they were afraid was their core, which is what I call the pit of pain. And because people stay away from inside their bodies the way you did, because you're afraid of the pain that you're holding and hiding because you don't know what to do with it. And when that's very clearly not your core, that's not the hub of your wheel, it is not the still place, then everything else becomes like, even the worst pain is not who you are. When they get an actual experience of that, it shifts it. So then gradually, not instantly, they develop the ability to be with those, the whatever was unprocessable by a small child or an adult. And you have to, I spent years and years and years being grounded and not centered. But you can't center without being grounded.
Mm-hmm. You have to start there. And it feels...
You have to start coming back to you. You have to start by being able to feel the physiological energy of your body.
Yes.
I mean, start at the physical, we'll get more like swishy later.
Yes. It feels like you're also describing in internal family systems, they talk about self-energy. In mysticism and spiritual traditions, they talk about the soul. And here you are, you're in the 1960s doing this before internal family systems existed. That center. But I find that it is hard for people to tolerate and create the space to find that and stillness inside in that place. And one of the pathways when I came across, and this is actually how we met, was I found that sound helped people to find that still place in the center because it quieted the nervous system and the mind so that was even possible.
Right.
Yeah. But there's other ways as well. Besides sound?
Well, sound is vibration, which is energy, and it's all one. And so that's awesome. And I think where sound then becomes totally helpful and usable if you're in San Francisco on the street having a panic attack is if you note a tone or hum, like vibrate. I have used tone, and I obviously use the polyvagal programs. And what I want to teach people is how to do it, how to connect with themselves, how to center when they can't think of that, or when they're not around a headset, or they're being yelled at by their boss. And so to really pragmatic inside their own body. It's like, what do I do now?
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. I mean, basically how to, I don't know that I can go through the whole thing of building it right now. I mean, we could, but, and it'd take some time. And I think that's what we can do in a class, but, basically how I get them to envisage first that still place. And then when they found it, how they can come back to it. And so we practice, right? So that it becomes more real. And then, humans are so interesting. Then it becomes, can you remember that you know how?
Yeah. Yeah. We have to keep repeating until it becomes second nature. Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So, I mean, these are so fundamental, I think, to, the process of change that we've started this conversation of how do we move into this massive transformation? Well, we have to start with the body, and we have to start with the emotions, and we have to understand that we're connected and that we're energetic. And I love how you're breaking this down in a way that allows us to just take a bit of it and contemplate spending time with just a piece. And that's my invitation, I think, to people as they're listening, is, well, go to check out centering and check out grounding, and start to just pick one piece of this, what we're offering today, to begin the process of coming into the body. Because that, in order to make the bigger shift, yes, that we're being asked to make, we have to first do that piece.
And we can't say no to that because we're physical for a reason. We can see our physicality as an offering by the universe. They wanted to have beings experience physicality. So we can't do it without our bodies. We can't, we're here on purpose to go through what we're going through in bodies. And so that's really important.
Yeah, we're in human form for a reason. So I think that this speaks to some of the ways in which perhaps in the 1960s, you can say, there might have been more of a bypassing of the body in how people were evolving. So we want to reach higher states, but we might not go in and through the body, right? Not
yeah.
happening.
I've had a lot of people who were in ashrams who had meditation practices that completely disconnected them from their bodies. And then they had bulimia and, I mean, all sorts of other issues going on. And there was an ashram that's local that, like, one person like snuck out and said, "Don't use my real name," because she had a position, but she was desperate. Like, spirituality doesn't leave the body. It happens within the body because it happens everywhere. And we're supposed to be actually, I mean, having bodies is wonderful. We can do stuff that other people can't. And we're supposed to be here, and our leaving is just pushing away stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. And I also think as people contemplate our community, they are looking for places where we are not spiritually bypassing. And I think that it's important to note that and what that means. So in moving forward, as you've talked about, so some of the power tools that's in your book and the way that you teach, and of course you'll come and be teaching in our program a little bit, are the coming back to sensation, coming back to the body, understanding what it means to embody the energetics of who you are. And then there's this piece, let's come back to the actual title of the book, From Hurt to Joy, because I do want to ask, like, what's joy got to do with it? If I had to, pick a question. So let's talk about joy for a little bit.
Okay. I want to talk about joy and other energies, because I also do work with people with other energies, which then become possible as they free themselves. And I have been, I do in my work, but also in other ways, engage with, like, my guides, energies that I hear, energies of the person. And it does connect with the joy. The joy is, I mean, my definition of joy is it's universal. It's the universal state of being. And happiness is great and wonderful. And I don't want to have any of those words just mean because you got a new dress. Maybe that's pleasure. I don't know. I mean, pleasure, I think, is great too. Happiness, just because that's a sign of being in the present. And I don't want to make a distinction between joy and happiness, and joy is like when you really get a sense of what I call your staunch sense of self, which, so you're, from a psychotherapeutic sense, you're in yourself in a way, like the definition of a strong sense of self in traditional psychodynamic psychotherapy is, like, is that yourself is strong, and the self is a specific thing. And one of the clearest aspects of yourself is that you know that you are a fine, staunch, good being, member of the universe. I added that. Therapy doesn't add that. I added that. So, but the traditional definition is you know that you're a good person. And so then if something happens, it's a mistake. Brene Brown took this and ran with it. She's got a lot of wonderful stuff about, like, being shamed versus being in yourself and making a mistake. I'm talking about that. And that's you need that sense of self. You develop that sense of self as you free yourself of the effects of like the traumatic feelings, because in my sense, you build a stronger and stronger knowing that you're right here, and in the process of going through those emotions and releasing them, you actually learn that you are still standing here. And the joy in the book is then being with you as you really are, and then undoing the habits of trauma that you have to, like, it's sort of like the last third is a combination of my energy view and positive psychology, sort of, in that I find that people have to work to undo, once they're pretty solidly in themselves, they have to work to undo their anticipating danger or assuming that they won't be liked or whatever their old pattern was, when it doesn't have any meat anymore, but it's a habit. And so I think it's important to work at recognizing that our actual state, and I'm loving that people like David Clements, who's a theoretical physicist, is talking about that our natural state is joy and happiness. And I mean, one of the things he says is seriously overrated.
It makes me think about this idea that we have strategies we develop when we don't feel like we belong and we don't feel safe, and those strategies become our ways of operating. So we have to. I think growth is a matter of turning inward and really thinking about whether we are operating from a strategy or from this pure space of joy. I know I started to feel joy in the past 7 years where I just started to belly laugh, like this deep belly laugh, that this laughter. And I had enough people in my life down the line who had this laugh. So when it happened, I went, oh, that's what that is. That's a laugh that's associated with joy. It was friends, not family members. Because, we can grow up our whole life without anybody in our life ever having joy, mirroring joy, right? And it can be a foreign thing. And for me, it was like, what is this that I'm feeling? And Peter Levine talks about it as coming back to the vitality of the child, the divine child, which is full of joy and curiosity. And so how to move and unpack the things that are preventing you from feeling that vitality, that energy, that spontaneity. And I love that it just feels like we speak the same language, and you've got it, packaged in a book that people can kind of, take a chapter, work on it, chew on it, be with, what you're offering, and do some of the work internally. But also understand, why a provider might be doing what a provider's doing with you. Because I think many of the providers that are listening, we're all doing the same thing. We have our certain way of doing it, and demystifying, what therapy is. At the end of the day, we're all attempting to help people come back to that vitality of that divine child within them. But you and I are going to take it a step further, not just the authentic self of the child, but the connection to the universal field and the universal consciousness, and knowing that we are a part of it, and it's everywhere.
And being able to interact.
And being able to interact with it. Yes, that it's like an extended family.
Absolutely. Yes. That way. Like they're family members that want to meet us.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it might be the tree. It might be your guides.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most.
Yeah. And we're moving into part of the shift is beginning to think about ourselves in that broader way, beyond the flat, that it's just me and the physical that's here, or much, much more.
Which is that is the stance of the isolated, constricted, stopped energy. That's not the way we're supposed to be. So we can see it, and totally right and correctly, as coming back to the child. It's also freeing ourselves to be who we were meant to be all along.
I love it. Well, we'll end here. Is there anything else that you feel is important for our guests before we end?
I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, we could go on talking and talking, but I'm going to stop here because it feels like there's enough. Like we've served a buffet, and you can take a bite of. I use a lot of metaphors of what feels right. We'll also put in the show notes, Sarah's book and some of the other references that she mentioned, in case you want to take a dive and explore those as well. I do feel like, Sarah has this capacity to hold this big picture, to understand what was happening in the 60s and where we are now. So she's a great resource for those that are just stepping into the awakening experience. We'll put her website. And then if you want to meet her in person, she will be one of the guest faculty in the 6-month portion of our program. So feel free to stop by and visit and meet her there. And it's just been a pleasure to sit and have this chat. And hopefully we've shared some information. Some of it might have been things you already knew, but maybe there's something that you hadn't been thinking about as you look at what's happening in the world around us. And you're asking that question, what is happening? Why is the world falling apart? So we're here to help you have a different perspective around what's happening in the world, and to come back to yourself, to understand your role in this bigger change, and to find your joy.
Love it.
All right. Thanks again.
It's been a joy. Thank you so much. I always love talking to you. And yes, we could go on. And I'm so excited about your college and the trainings that you're offering. It's needed, and you're the person to do it. It's beautiful.
Well, I look forward to working with you. Thanks again.